This is Tiger Woods, and welcome to another golf podcast presented by Bridgestone.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of another golf podcast presented by Bridgestone. I'm joined here physically with Emilia. We're sitting here at Cuscowilla. We're just recording some content about mindset, and she dropped down here to Georgia to kind of do that. So, Emilia, welcome back.
Thank you, Adam. It's been so fun today, and it's nice weather, thank goodness.
Beautiful.
You never know what you're going to get down here in the South.
Yeah.
Either 40 degrees, or right now it's 65, so.
Oh, yeah. It's so nice.
Much better, but yeah, it's been great so far today, and wow, we had such an awesome guest that we're really excited for you guys to listen into. Chad Mumm, part of
yes.
executive producer of Full Swing, the famous documentary series that we all know and love, and can't wait for season 2.
And as this episode comes out, it will be launched. We're dropping this episode today, is the first day of Full Swing season 2. So we're ready to watch ourselves, and through this interview with him, he really teased a lot of great episodes and a lot of drama. How can you possibly have more drama than season 1? But there is a lot more drama into this season, so we're all looking forward to kind of season 2 and getting our eyeballs on it.
Basically, all the questions that you would have wanted to ask the person who created the series, we've asked. So let's just get right into the episode and get ready to listen to what Chad Mumm has to say.
All right, so this is one we've been waiting on for a long time to get on the show. We're so excited to introduce Chad Mumm, which is an Emmy winner. He's a chief creative officer at Vox Studio for 13 years, but maybe most importantly and most directly to our listeners, he's the executive producer of the Netflix documentary Full Swing. So welcome to the podcast, Chad.
Hey guys, great to be here. Excited to chat a little Full Swing season 2 with y'all.
Yeah, we're so excited to break down a number of things, but to start off, it's only natural on a golf podcast to learn about your background in golf. So who introduced you to the game? What age did you start? And what got you interested in golf?
You know, I was fortunate to grow up the son of an Air Force officer, so I moved around a lot, and one of the things about the Air Force, when they build a new Air Force base, the joke is the runway goes in first and then the golf course second, and then they build everything else. So my dad was the one who introduced me to the game. My grandfather was also an Air Force colonel, and he was an avid golfer. So between the two of them, I started playing golf in the Panhandle of Florida at the Eglin Golf Course, the Eglin Air Force Base Golf Course, when I was about 6 years old. I did a summer golf camp. And then remembers vividly hitting a sawed-off Slazenger 5-iron. One of those swings I hit right on the screws, and I've been trying to chase that dragon ever since. And so I grew up playing junior golf, moved around a lot as a kid, and then settled down. My dad retired. We moved to Atlanta, and so I played a lot of junior golf in the Atlanta area and around the Southeast. I remember playing against Brian Harmon. He was younger than me, but we ended up in some high school tournament together, and that was the first time I realized I wasn't going to go pro. But it was golf's been a part of my life almost as long as I can remember. My first ever job actually was working at a golf store. I was a stock boy at 14 at a golf store. When I turned 16, I started working as a range picker and cart boy out at a local course in Peachtree City, Georgia, and worked at the University of Georgia golf course, running the driving range up there, and then moved to the big city, to New York afterwards, and used to take my golf bag on the Long Island Railroad to go try to get a walk-on spot at Bethpage back when I was in my early 20s.
Yep.
So, I'm obsessed with it. It's been the pleasure and the honor of my career to be able to bring golf to Netflix in such a interesting and fun way. And I'm excited to share season 2 with everybody.
Yeah, we are too. Everyone that I've talked to in the golf industry loved season 1, and we can't wait for season 2. It was interesting. I'm a fellow Panhandle, Florida guy myself. I grew up kind of west of Tallahassee, so it's nice to talk to a fellow Panhandle, North Florida. Very different than what people think of Florida, but
yeah, best kept secret in all of the beaches. I think I've been been to a lot of nice beaches, but man, it's hard to beat the Panhandle.
Yeah, Destin, Panama City, it's got a nice stretch for sure. So took you 9 years. We've read that it took 9 years to kind of pitch this full swing idea, and take us through the timeline of that 9 years, and how did the idea, what's the genesis of the idea of kind of doing this type of series?
Yeah, so it actually got started even longer than that. I went down. So when I graduated from Georgia, I went up to New York City. I ended up, one of the early employees at Vox Media, and I was running our video programming across the company. And the PGA Tour was looking to, think about getting a little smarter about digital media and then writing for millennial audience. That's kind of what we specialized at Vox Media. So I went down and we met with the PGA Tour, and we talked to them about a couple ideas, and one of them was, making a documentary series following the players on the tour, and we ended up, not being getting that deal done back then, but I became obsessed with that idea, and I stayed close with the executives at the tour, namely Chris Wandell, who works on the media team there, and so we stayed friends, and we'd play golf every time we could. We'd oftentimes find ourselves in Vegas for CES at the same time, and we'd play some golf together. And when I moved out to Los Angeles 9 years ago to start Vox Media Studios, which was our film and television business, I saw Chris and pitched him on the idea. I said, "Hey, what about that doc series? We should bring it back." And it was always like, "Well, I can't imagine the tour. We think it's a cool idea, but it's not going to happen. These guys." It's a gentleman's game. They're not going to cuss. There's all, they had a very specific view of how their athletes should be portrayed under this sort of Tim Fincham era. And, every year I'd see Chris, and we got to become very close friends. We'd play a lot of golf, and every year I'd pitch him again. And I started making television shows, and all of a sudden, had some success in Hollywood as a producer, and made a couple sports projects, and just kind of would see him once a year and ask him again. And finally, in 2019 in Vegas at Shadow Creek, of all places, we met up and played a round of golf, and Jay Monahan had just become commissioner in the fall before that, and I asked Chris on the range, hey, you think now's the time? I think we got to do this. Let's make our hard knocks for golf. And on the first tee, he said, "You know what? I think now's the time." And over that 18-hole round, we kind of hashed out the deal of what would become ultimately Full Swing. And, 3 months later, I was at Ponte Vedra HQ for the Players' Championship to kind of close up the deal. We had a signed agreement with the PGA Tour to give me the rights to make a show like this. And then, it took another sort of 2.5 years, COVID and all that, to get the majors on board, working with the tour, and then convince, 28 players for season one to let us into their lives in a big way. And I couldn't imagine when we started filming in 2022, the year we were going to get as pro golf, saw itself kind of completely disrupted and reinvented. And, they say timing is everything. And we really did. We got lucky with the timing, and some things that are worth doing, you can't put them down. And this is one that, I've been lucky to make a lot of amazing shows and work with a lot of really creative people. And this one is one that is most special to me because, obviously golf's been a huge part of my life, but also, just the grinding it out to get it made and to have it actually pay off and be, everything I wanted to be and more is honestly the highlight of my career.
Yeah, Chad, it's such a neat story for you to go through. And there's just something about a documentary, particularly a sports documentary, that pulls people in. Could you describe what that is and how that allowed you to sort of lay the foundation of who you wanted to document and how you wanted to tell these players' stories?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of sports in general is it's and golf in particular, it's such a meritocracy. And what I loved about golf is it's infinitely quantifiable. That if you're scouting an NFL player or a baseball player, I mean, certainly there's quantifiable talent, but golf is just brutally honest about you either shoot the number or you don't. And there's really no fake.
What do you shoot?
Yeah, what'd you shoot? Exactly. And I think that combined with the fact that golfers are inherently, it's an individual sport, and they are kind of like CEOs of their own sort of empires, made them very, they're used to talking. They're used to talking to the press. They're used to talking to people. They've been playing golf in groups with, old people, young people, whatever, their entire lives. And then ultimately, like when it comes down to it and the pressure's on, there's really nowhere to hide. It's kind of all on their shoulders. So, I thought golf would make for a really compelling sport to kind of set a series like this in. And what I wasn't quite expecting was just how open and how honest the players were. And I think I give a lot of credit, one, to Drive to Survive, because a lot of the golfers from the first season, they'd watched Drive to Survive and they loved it, and they were ready for golf's version of Drive to Survive. And that always felt like a really impossibly high bar to hit. That show is incredible and obviously changed the view of Formula One in the United States and created this giant boom in F1. But we wanted to, try to do something similar and peel back the curtain a little bit on these athletes and not just show what happens on the course, but what it takes to get there and what happens, when you don't have your best stuff and what it takes to kind of like live and die out there in pro golf. And, I think we were blown away by just how much these golfers, let us into their worlds and just how interesting their lives were. And I think the key to a show like this is to balance kind of the feats of incredible athletic talent with, human stories. And ultimately, the goal of the show is to humanize these athletes and their families and their friends and the people around them, to kind of put in contrast the life off the course with those moments of incredible pressure, incredible heartbreak, and incredible joy. When you finally get that big breakthrough win, or you win a major for the first time, or you make a Ryder Cup team, or you qualify for a U.S. Open. The stakes are different for everybody, but I think what this show does well is kind of opens the curtain to humanize what it's like, out there under all that pressure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the episodes that I kind of go to a lot that I really loved, and I think a lot of people love, is that Joel Damon episode, and his vulnerable state as he was trying to kind of make the U.S. Open. And here he was, he got through 18 and he just pounded a couple seltzers at the quote turn of a 36-hole tournament, and he went out there and shot a good score. And it made it feel just like us, right? Like the everyday guys, and you're playing in your club championship and you have a bummer of a 9, and you're like, man, let me hit a hot dog and maybe a brew at the turn and get some swing all. And it's just so fun seeing that side of the guys out there, because a lot of times it could be seen as this facade of perfectness all the time, but these guys are just real guys playing golf, and it's so cool seeing that part of it. And I love that episode.
Yeah, well, Joel, is such an amazing human being, and it's such a great subject for a doc series like this. And and really credit goes to Joel for leaning in, and Gina and Lana, or Gino and Lana, they really leaned in to the series, and there was not really any time when we asked to bring the cameras out that he said no. He leaned in fully and embraced it. And what we tell everybody who says yes to being in full swing is kind of the more you lean into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And I think nobody exemplifies that better than Joel Damon.
And one thing that I found interesting that you mentioned before is that the first time you would meet with the players, you guys did just audio interviews. And I remember you mentioning that eventually 80% of the story they would tell would come from that interview. So take us through what that would look like, and how come those interviews became so successful?
Well, this was a technique that I learned and we implemented from Box to Box, who is our producing partner on this, and Box to Box is founded by James Gay Reese and Paul Martin, and Warren Smith's one of our other executive producers. He's on that team. They've been making amazing sports films and documentaries for decades now. Going all the way back to Senna, which is I think one of the best sports movies of all time. And they've learned that with these high-level athletes, oftentimes they do so much media that you've got to get them out of their sort of media training. And the best way to, the worst way to do that is to put a bunch of lights up and put a big movie camera in their face, and then it becomes very easy for them to kind of fall back on the normal talking points of an athlete's sort of press conference. But all of a sudden, when you take the cameras away and you sit down there on a couch and you're comfortable and you're in street clothes and there's a microphone on a table, they just tend to be more open, and it's a little bit more like a podcast. And we don't really have a set agenda. We just sit down and say, tell us your story. Who are you, and what do you want out of this year? And it is it is amazing that for the most part, the things that matter to them at that point of those interviews are the things that end up, paying off as story stakes for them for the show. And I'll give you a specific example. So for season 2, we introduced Keegan Bradley to, the Netflix audience, and I sat down and did his audio interview at the Torrey Pines, at the Farmers last year in January. And within 5 minutes of sitting down with him, he had come off a pretty great fall. He had won in Japan and was kind of back in the winner's circle. And I asked him, what do you want out of this year? And the first thing out of his mouth was, I want to play on that Ryder Cup team. It's the most important thing to me. I want to get back. I've been there before. I want to get back. This might be my last chance. I'm getting older in my career. This is my shot, and I've got to play my way onto it because I may not just be an obvious choice for a pick. And, that became the subject matter of an entire episode of the show, is Keegan's quest to make that team and his ultimate heartbreak when he doesn't get the pick. And, and so you just see like what it means to these guys, and you get to know them when the pressure's off a little bit and there's no cameras in their face. They just speak more freely. They're more comfortable. They're like, they sit back and really have a real conversation. And, that's been a really valuable tool for us to kind of figure out what stories we're going to tell.
Yeah, and as I do want to have a couple more questions for Full Swing for sure, but I want to pivot for just a second. Let's talk about your game. How's the state of Chad's game, and are there some goals this year, places you want to play or a handicap to get to? What's going on in Chad's golf game?
I always like to make the excuse that I wish I was playing more golf, but I can't actually say that this year because my GIN handicap is searchable. And I got a notice from GIN when they did their annual rewind, and I think I played like 47 rounds of golf or 52 rounds of golf. So I was like, all right, I guess I can't use that excuse anymore. But I know we're on a Bridgestone podcast here. I had my second ever hole-in-one back in October with a Bridgestone golf ball. So those
what we like to hear.
Going back in the bag, I spun it in with a gap wedge from 128 yards, something like that, at a golf course here out in California. So that one's up on the shelf. I'd had another ace before when I was a little bit younger, and it was it was way more luck than skill. I like finned a 6-iron. I thought I hit it over the green. It must have hit the flag and dropped straight in. This one was actually a good shot and super satisfying. So I'm a Bridgestone fan for sure now, possibly for life. I think like obviously I am very lucky to get to play with a bunch of really great people and play a lot of golf, and I don't have any particular goals for this year. I just want to get it around, make a few less double bogeys, and maybe try to get the game in shape for a run at the club championship this summer. We'll see.
I have always been so curious about this as someone who has always been in front of the camera but doesn't really know what goes behind the scenes. So I've heard you mention that you filmed 300 days, could have been way more, for the first season of Full Swing. How do you take all of the footage, which to an outsider can feel so overstimulating, and then condense it into this drama-packed, intense, just super engaging show?
Well, I can tell you, it's just as intimidating to an insider when you're sitting there looking at 900 hours of footage. So I had our team last year kind of added up, and I think we shot like 750 hours of footage on our cameras, and then we pulled in another sort of 3,000 hours of archive stuff. And this year, I had them added up again. It was 900 hours and almost 10,000 hours of archive. And,
wow.
One of the benefits of a show like this is we have a lot of time. I think that's what makes these shows work is, we have the blessing of context and space to tell these stories, to let them develop. I think that's part of the reason why we have such good access with the players, is they know that, if we film something, it's not coming out on Twitter the next day. It'll be out like 9 months in the future. And, these are all type A athletes. So, they have a really bad round. Our cameras are there. They assume they're going to go out and win the next week, because that's the attitude you have to be successful in pro golf. And they, so we have the benefit of context. We also have a really amazing team. I have a great archive team led by a guy named Tim Duffy, who is responsible for taking in all of the footage that we get, both the stuff that we shoot and the stuff we pull in from the archives and things like that, and organize that. I mean, Tim has a whole team of people working under him to organize and source all that stuff and get it all synced up so our editors can kind of have this palette of things to grab to help tell the story. And, our head of post, Christian Winters, is another, amazing producer who, sits back in the office and essentially tries to digest everything as it comes in. We log everything as it comes. Producers write notes on every single shoot. And then, about 2-3 months into filming each season, we've sat down in a room and put up a bunch of story ideas on the wall. And a lot of those come out, as I mentioned earlier, kind of from those audio interviews. And we start to pair people up. We think, okay, well, could this storyline match with this? And are these going to time out at the right time? And do you think we can get a conclusion? And a lot of it is like placing some bets on what you think is going to pay off. And, I think this year we had 8 episodes. We ended up with, almost getting like every story right. I think there was a few that got left on the cutting room floor, mainly because we didn't feel like we had an ending, but that just means we've got more content and more context for anything we do in the future.
One of the things that I really was curious about is, obviously you're going into season 2. What are some of the learnings you got from season 1? Obviously it was a huge success, so I don't feel like there was anything that was left out or any mistakes, because it looked amazing. Everyone loved it. But what were some of the learnings that you take into season 2 that you wanted to implement this year?
It was really important to us in season 1 to establish the world and really help viewers who aren't hardcore golf fans like understand the game, basically understand what pro golf is like, how you make money, how you make cuts, how you qualify for tournaments, what tournaments mean more than others.
Can we just pause and explain the cut for everybody out there? Just
so
a few
golf
times.
A golf tournament is 4 days, and if you don't make the cut, you're not
4
going to
days
get paid.
after 30.
Yeah. So
that one just turned into this great running joke. But all of us everyday golfers, but you're right, you had to explain it, but I love that, how it turned into a thing.
Oh yeah, well listen, I heard all that feedback for sure, and it was always a part of how we had to set the stage for what the world was. And the good thing is for season 2, our 2 goals I think out of the gate was, first and foremost, how do we make a better sophomore album than our first album? How do we make season 2 better, bigger, more dramatic, more exciting, more interesting, more heartbreaking? All of the above. How do we make it better than season 1? And anytime, you do a season 1 of anything, it's just you're figuring out what the show is. You're understanding what stories work, what stories don't, what access works, what access doesn't. We spent a lot of time last year shooting golf. I think we spent a little more time this year, like off the course or in the locker room or, with mics on family members, because that's where, the drama comes to life. And, and we wanted it to be more narrative this year. I think now that we felt like we didn't have to set up the universe of golf as much and introduce all these characters for the first time. We had a lot of returning faces from season 1. So, you just don't have to do as much backstory. And really, like, season 2 kind of picks up right where season 1 left off. Like Rory, fresh off winning the FedEx Cup, #1 golfer in the world. And you just kind of see how things play out from there. And I'm very excited that for this season we have two-part episodes. Not every episode is sort of one-off, like individual storyline. There's a lot more connectivity and narrative arcs that kind of develop over the course of the season. And so episodes 1 and 2 are a 2-parter, and episodes 7 and 8 are a 2-parter. And I think that, watching this series, you're really just going to get thrown right into the action for season 2. And it really, like, you hit the gas and it never lets up until you get to the end.
I can't wait for 7 and 8. I'm looking forward to that Ryder Cup one. For sure.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear. And one thing that you mentioned earlier that we definitely wanted to ask about is how Liv threw a wrinkle or a dramatic blessing, I don't know, into your golf, into full swing. And how does that impact, or does that impact season 2 at all?
Well, season 1 was more dramatic than I had ever expected because of the Liv disruption and those players leaving and the kind of constant drumbeat of like, will they stay or will they go? And that created this really interesting dynamic in the locker room at the PGA Tour, which has always been kind of a bit of a, like, I don't know, I equate it as like a traveling circus, but there's like this certain camaraderie that comes from like making it on the, the apex tour in the world. And last year, the locker room disruption was just like people didn't know if the guy sitting next to them was going to be leaving the next day. It was like, who's going to leave? It was a lot of speculation. For season 2, the June 6th announcement of the framework agreement with PIF between the PGA Tour and the Saudi Investment Fund was just like, it was like earth shaking and just as surprising kind of for everybody. And unlike season one, where there was this kind of constant drip of like suspicion and speculation, nobody saw that coming. So, and it kind of impacted like everybody equally. It was just as disruptive to the PGA Tour players as it was to the LIV players. Nobody really knew what the future was going to look like. And it sort of threw everybody into this chaos of like, what's going to happen? And, and really without a resolution, it introduced this whole new layer of confusion and chaos, and affected kind of everyone at the same moment, at the same time, in the same way. And it just made for another compelling, incredible moment that we could have never imagined happen. I thought we were going to spend season 2 focus on the Ryder Cup and kind of be able to put the LIV storyline, to bed for a minute, and like, sure enough, June 6th comes around and we're thrust right back into it. And, and I think you'll see when you watch the show just how disruptive it was kind of from the inside, and just how many unanswered questions it left these players with. And it kind of created implications that are still being unraveled to this day. And the factions realigned and people's opinions shifted overnight. And, just yet another dramatic twist and turn in the world of pro golf.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can't wait to watch kind of how that all unfolds. And that kind of leads to my next question. The season 2 of Full Swing comes out today. As we drop this, it's going to be available. Without being too spoiler heavy, what are you most excited? Like, is there a particular episode or particular topic that you're most excited to see? What will come of it? Or are you excited for fans to kind of see this specific one?
I am proud of the whole season, but the episode 3 with Wyndham Clark and Joel Damon, it's called Mind Games. That episode stands out to me as this show at its very best. We had all access to 2 incredibly different but incredibly similar players that both overcame significant trauma with the passing of their moms, and they both overcame it in totally different ways to totally different ends. And it's just an amazing story that you couldn't really write. Like, there's no way that I could have predicted those 2 characters would end up in an episode together, let alone have the connectivity that they do and have the story pay off in the way that it does. And, I think that one is going to do a lot for destigmatizing mental health amongst men in general, but like pro athletes even more. And it's just a fascinating look inside a storyline that I don't think anybody, even now, like, has any idea happened. Like, that will break news in a lot of ways, and I think, it will shock people. So I'm most excited for you to check that out. And then, the whole Ryder Cup, the 3-episode sort of Ryder Cup arc is as electric as you could imagine it being, just given all that went down, and the fact that, for our show, being able to know that, like, one side was going to win and one side was going to lose. No one was going to have like a T13th or something. It was just amazing to be able to like build the stakes where you knew that half the players are going to be celebrating and half are going to be crushed. And how you build to that moment is, for a producer, it's a real gift.
Wow. I mean, I've been really hyped for season 2 for a long time, but I'm just getting so excited. It's just that humanization of these professional athletes, it just makes everything. I mean, I feel now that I work in broadcasting, having watched Full Swing and know a lot of the players already, but getting that deep dive, you root for them so much harder, and because you know that background. But last question before we wrap up, I gotta ask, general curiosity, is there a player that you're dying to get on the show that you haven't yet?
There's one big one, obviously, that is such a long shot, but is a Bridgestone athlete. So if you want to help with the big cat, feel free to put
Let's get it out in the ethos.
Yeah, just put it out there. No, we've been really lucky to get a lot of amazing access from a lot of great stories, and some of the best stories in the show come from places that we never expected. And I think Matt Fitzpatrick being an example from season 1, who wasn't really on our radar screen, but we decided to kind of jump in with, and he really leaned in and obviously pays off in really dramatic fashion at the U.S. Open last year. So, I think we're hard at work, always working on our access. I think if you can put in a good word for us with Tiger, that'd be great. But, we're really proud of the show we make and feel like, we're well set up to hopefully make it for many seasons to come.
Well, Chad, thanks again for joining us, and congrats on all the amazing success. And we know season 2 is going to be just as good, if not better, than what we got in the first one. The bar's high, but we know you're going to kind of bring it again. So we're looking forward to season 2. And thank you so much for joining us to talk about all things Full Swing and your golf swing.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, y'all. Thanks again. Look forward to you giving it a watch.
Well, Adam, I feel I have all my questions answered, and we're going to have to talk to him again after season 2 because I'm going to have more questions. But it was so amazing to hear him talk through not only the strategies that Vox and Chad use to get the elements that you really want to get out of a professional athlete, those human elements, but also how you put together an entire season.
I know.
I mean, 900 hours and hours of footage that they were talking about. It's just absolutely astounding just what they have done.
I'm sure he has tons of notes, having been on site when they're recording all these, and I'm sure there's times where he's not at places where they're recording. They're probably recording at several different times, and you got to just keep an insane amount of notes and creativity to kind of put that puzzle piece together to get these episodes as they need to be. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, season 1 was amazing, and they did a good job of kind of putting that all together. And then season 2 has more content, more hours and hours of footage. So, that editing room was probably on fire in there, trying to get everything as it needs to be to build these episodic seasons together in season 2.
Yeah, and really excited that pretty much everyone from season 1 will be featured again in season 2. But that episode, I think 3 is what Chad said, with Joel Damon and Wyndham Clark. I'm so excited for that, and I just think anytime, mental health is definitely a conversation that people have more of, but when it's being told from professional athletes, it just gives it that much more credibility of why you need to talk about it and how important it is to overcome any kind of adversity. So I'm really excited for that. Of course, very excited for the Ryder Cup episodes.
Yeah, humanizing these guys, that's the biggest thing. He mentioned that earlier too, because sometimes we put them on a pedestal, and we go to football games and basketball games and we want to yell at guys and it's like, you're a bum. And so, but
you suck.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so nice to kind of put a story behind them. And some guys are obviously more rootable, easier to root for than others, but then also getting the side of the ones you think you don't want to root for, and you're like, oh man, he's a little bit of a softie, and I never really kind of got that from him. So it's so fun to watch how going into an episode, I'm even in the golf industry, I mean, like, I know how that guy's going to be.
Yeah.
And then you watch the episode and you come out going, oh no, that's not at all how I thought it would be.
Completely different from the image that I have created about this person. No, but so excited to dive into the season, and we know you guys are too. We hope you enjoyed listening to Chad as much as we did, and we'll see you all next time on another golf podcast presented by Bridgestone. Another Golf podcast is brought to you by Bridgestone Golf and the all-new Tour B Mindset. Mindset. Focus to perform.